The Black Fat Femme Podcast is a production of iHeartRadio and Dr. John Paul, LLC. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Black Fat Femme Podcast, where all the intersections of identity are celebrated. I am one of your hosts, John, also known as Dr. John Paul, coming to you stressed, depressed, and highly favored. How are you, Queen Joho?
You know, very much same as always. I feel like I'm always stressed. I will say I since I've become a Lexapro girly, I'm no longer depressed. I'm feeling. I would say I'm still feeling like maybe if I made depressed fun, like ooh, that's not me depresso. Like if a song that said that's not me depresso, that's what I would say.
Okay,
But besides
I
that,
see it.
fam, it's Jordan, aka
Yeah.
Joho, or Flutter. If you ask me what my X-Man name would be, and I don't know why it'd be Flutter, it just would be Flutter because I said so. Because I'm ready to mutate after the season finale of X97. I don't know if you watched it, John, but this show was so good. I am truly gagged at how amazing this whole season was.
Real quick, not to cut you off, but I'm trying to understand. Is it a cartoon?
Yes.
Okay, so it is a cartoon, and it's
an animation. It's an animation.
Animation. Okay. So let me make sure that I get it correct before the animation before the girlies come after us. So it is an animation, and it is built like what we watched when we were a kid, right?
Yes. So it is a direct sequel of the X-Men animated series that was on Fox. But what's different is that it's bigger budget, bigger baddies, actual blood, actual fighting. They can curse on this thing. The stakes are higher. The time is longer. You have 30 plus minutes versus 20 minutes or less. So it's a lot different. It's really good. And it go like Degrassi, it goes there. And it goes there quick. Like they breeze through some storylines very fast. And part of me is like, damn, this was like a three fucking comic thing. We did it in 20 minutes. Can we calm down? But also like the rate in which it moves is amazing. I had some expectations for this reboot / sequel, and everything was defied every episode. Like defying gravity. Cynthia Erivo somewhere is screaming, or Idina Menzel as well. If you know, you know. Kudos to Marvel for this incredible show. Mm-hmm. And honestly, people won't say it, but kudos to the creator Bo DeMaio for kicking off a beautiful and artful first season. People keep talking about that he was fired, and like, I mean, from what I hear and understand on the streets, he was fired for a reason that is like actually not a bad reason whatsoever. And so, I mean, if that's true and it's not for a outlandish reason, then I will publicly say, congrats to him for this. This is an amazing show. If it comes out that it was for a outlandish reason, I will eat my words, and that's totally fine. I will definitely eat my words on camera in the show. But at present, I'm like, no. If it's what everyone says it was, that was a dumbass reason.
Yes, and I just want to say this before people jump into our emails, because people love to do that, and we welcome it. Come on down. It is a conversation. Mm-hmm. What I will say is that there are two stories here, and no one really knows the truth but Bo. So there's the story that it was the OnlyFans, and what he was doing did not align with the brand of Marvel. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, that's what I hear. And then the other story was he was just a dick and really hard to work with. So and again, I know people in the industry now who have told me, who have jumped, because I jumped in and said, when I was jumping and caping for them and saying, I think it's unfair that there are a lot of, basically queer people getting positions and then they get the boot. Someone jumped in and was like, girl, he didn't get the boot for what everyone is saying he got the boot for. Word on the curb. And this is allegedly now, because we don't want to get sued. But allegedly, word on the curb is that he was not an easy person to work with. And that is part of the reason why they let him go. So, who knows the truth?
If it's the former, again, kudos. If it's the latter, I have no comment. And that's really that on that. So all that to say, y'all, John and I are already laughing because we have a special guest with us today, and they are making us laugh with their reactions. In the hot seat with us is local legends in San Diego, and honestly around the world. They are an international sensation. As many folks know of this wonderful human being, and I am grateful to have experienced them in person. They are a university professor, a brilliant researcher, a hilarious performer, a fashionista, and a former 2-time Jeopardy contestant. Please give it up for
know that's right.
Professor Dr. S. TJ Tallie. How are you today, my dear friend?
Mamas, welcome.
Thank you. That was the most luxe introduction. I just thank you. I felt like I just had shoulder pads just given off to me.
Give them
Thanks, baby.
shoulder,
You
shoulder,
You
shoulder.
know
so much.
what? The champagne was not
Yes,
burned. Thank you. I am so happy
yeah.
to be here. You both are absurd and delightful. I have listened to the cast before, and I followed you. Joho, I've known for a minute in real time, but John, I followed you on the
I
internet
love
for
it.
quite some time too. So, yeah, baby, you a delight and a treat. So I'm
Mhm.
so happy to be here. I am a college professor. I teach African history at the University of San Diego, and we're in that weird, terrible eye of the storm right now where all the students are
Mm.
in finals. And as I was saying to you guys before we started recording, what that means is they are slowly but surely transferring all of their anxiety and rage to
Mm,
me. Right. So now it is
mm.
my job in the next 7 days to
Mhm.
take all of their feelings and turn them into
Yeah.
great
Ooh,
devices. So
my God.
I'm in
Can I
that
Ooh,
mode
can
right now where I'm
quick moment before we
mm.
move into our segment? That reminds me, child. I
yeah,
remember when I was in my undergrad. We're gonna be talking a lot about academics today, by the way, for those who are listening. But I remember when I was in my
ready.
undergrad, child, and I remember I overslept for one of my finals, and I forgot that the final time had changed. So I thought in my mind I was gonna get to class at 9:20, and the final was actually at 8. And I remember getting to class at 9:20 and my teacher being like, "You only really have 10 minutes to take this final." Baby, when I tell you I was so that if there was a moment in time that I could have literally just dissipated and faded away, that would have been one of them. But yes, I remember that. So thinking about you talking about finals, that memory lives. You just have those random memories that live in the corner
Like,
of your mind that never go away.
moment.
That was one of them. Just dumb and sleep.
It just they stay there
Mm-hmm.
rent free, and you become an adult, and you become, and yet they stay
Yeah.
like a pearl,
Never go
just
away.
perfectly just there. Because I took a final and I was at UCSD for undergrad, and so I was there in like 200 seat lecture
Mm-hmm.
hall, right? And I had pulled an all-nighter and I hadn't slept, and it was a 2-hour final, and I was starting in the blue book, and I shit you not that I made it about 20 minutes in, and I put my head down for a second, and I woke up
Sleep.
40
Yep.
minutes later. And I cannot explain to you the sensation of opening your eyes and regaining consciousness, and that quick section of trying to figure out
What happened?
what
Uh-huh.
what's happening.
Uh-huh.
Like you're like, I'm in a room, there's so many other people, there is a pen in my hand. Oh, this is not a
This
nightmare.
is real time.
This
Yes,
this
this is
is
Okay.
my
happening.
But
life.
also,
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
have put curses in
Yeah.
all my classmates because I know the bitch next to me on either side. You motherfuckers saw me sleep
Sleep.
and said, "No, no,
Yes.
it's fine. It's
Yep.
fine. It's fine."
Yep.
Oh, I was
Yes.
heated
Beyonce
that they
heated.
I
had
was
let me
no,
sleep
I've
the
been so
whole
hot
last
like
time.
this. You guys,
Yes.
you all let me feel like this, and then try to wake me up. You're like, oh, you oh, you need the rest, bitch. We're in the finals. Wake me up. Not
Not
right
not
now.
now.
No,
Not
Maybe
no.
two
now.
The
days
other one
ago,
was
but bitch,
wrong.
not now.
Yeah,
Yes.
trash.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Support
with
me,
that,
bitch.
yes,
Damn.
support me, bitch. Yes.
Mm.
Well, with that being said, we are going to move into our first segment of the show. And to honor our girl, Miss Tisha Campbell, like we always do in our Still Here segment, since today we've been talking about higher ed, obviously you all know we have Dr. Tallie here. There's obviously me who works in higher ed. And then I met Joho in higher ed, working in higher ed. One of the questions that we wanted to kind of talk about or get into is really thinking about this idea of the motivating factor for actually pursuing higher education. And so that's the question I wanted to ask in this segment. What is your motivating factor either for again, going into higher education or wanting to work in higher education? And I know for me, when I saw this question, I really thought about it, and I said, this is something that I constantly ask myself often, especially as someone who lectures pretty much full time at this point. And then, and also this idea too of, I have a lot of specifically Black queer folks who reach out to me and they say, I'm thinking about getting a
Mm.
doctorate. Should I do it? Should I not? Is it something that you would recommend? And so I know for me, one of the things that I always say is, count the cost. I think about my motivating factor maybe I would say 10, 15 years ago when I thought about starting and, going to college, for me, it was money. That was the biggest thing. I wanted to get out of poverty. Yeah, I knew that there was going to be no way really for me as a black fat femme to really make it in any other, I mean, outside of doing hair or outside of probably doing something in like theater or like performance or even drag. I didn't really know of any other option. Right. So for me, it was go to college. You have this, I had what, 2 or 3 scholarships. I had a scholarship from Wendy's when I worked there. Shout out to Wendy's for giving me the $25,000 that they gave me my first year. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And then when I left Wendy's, and when I left Wendy's my second year, I got a scholarship from Starbucks for being able to finish. So I was getting little coin here and there that was like, okay, maybe I did make the right choice. But I think a big part of it, and this is something we're going to talk about in the next segment, right? A lot of folks, I've been saying this, and I'm really trying to be less, because like people go, well, how do you work in higher ed, and how do you keep saying this? I always have to remind people, this is what I mean when I say that higher ed is a scam. It is a business. It is a business. And I think that is something that a lot of people kind of remiss and don't really think about. And so for me, I was sold the idea that education was going to further my life. And I didn't have anyone saying, John, just a second, keep in mind that it is also a business. And that is how they're going to get you around student loans. And that's how they're going to you're going to get the knowledge, but there's also parts of you that you're not going to be able to fully, be able to really see. And so I think for me, it's the idea of being broke, not really knowing any way to get out of the hood per se. Y'all know I grew up in San Bernardino. And that was really what was sold to me. Education was the thing that was going to get me out of it. It was kind of like the Willy Wonka of it all. But I wanted to ask you the same thing, Dr. Tallie. Like, what for you was your like, what was your motivator for wanting to go to school? And then Joho, we'll go to you.
Yeah. So, like joining the Light Bright Fiesta of this. So my mom is white, my dad is black, right? And so I grew up with two very different sort of educational models of what was growing up for me. So I was the first person to complete college on my dad's side of the family, right? And I was the third generation on my mom's, right? So my mother had done it, and her father had done it. Nobody else had done it, and so there was this sort of expectation of being that one. I grew up in LA. I was the one black kid in all the gifted and talented classes. So there was the sense of like, I was the one, right? From like the jump when like they would say slavery, and then all the white kids would turn and look at me, and I was like,
I don't even.
What? Me? How did I would get
Right.
Cisco. I was like,
no, why am I in
how'd
it?
you get me in here? Right? Like, what?
Why am I in
Why am I in this? I am Nene Leakes in this moment. I was like, but so there was always this sense of there was always this trajectory of like what I was supposed to be doing. And it was a mix, right? Of sort of like my white family had this sort of, middle class sense of value, but also this very particular black, newly aspiring towards middle classness value of like, you are going to be our hope, right? Like you are going to be the one. So there was this sort of deeply internalized expectation that first off, that was what college was going to be for me. It was just the next step that I was supposed to do. But I went back to visit my family back in LA, and I found like a journal from when I was 10, and that's wild. And I found something where I wrote where I said, when I grow up, I want to be a college professor.
Okay.
What?
Wow.
Sir? I have no recollection of this, but also, I'm 10. I've not been to a college. What did I think this was? But I think it was sort of like having heard about it and feeling like I had this sort of inclination where I was, like many a nerdy honors kid, I was like, I loved playing school. I loved teaching. I loved learning. And so there was a sense of I wanted to be able to think about ideas. So I find it wild because I was like, I knew I loved history. I knew I loved sort of learning, thinking about things. And I went to undergrad and I doubled in history and religion and minored in theater. And I was like, okay, how do I think about all these things together? How do I hold people's attention? How do I get them to think about life? How do I think about these things? And that got into me. And when I stayed in college, that's when I realized, first off, speaking of higher ed being a scam, I was like, I have majored in not one but two of the humanities. Cool. What an illustrious degree choice. But also the sense of like, what I want to do with this. So I immediately did a master's in history at the same school. And then I was burnt and crispy. I was like, I can't do this. I'd applied to some graduate schools. I hadn't gotten into them. I always want to tell this to my students. I applied to PhD programs as a 21-year-old master's student and was rejected to every single one of them. And that had never been a narrative for me, right? I was like, when you're the honors kid, and I literally had to be like, let's do therapy because I'm not ready to understand what this means for me, right? And I was, 21, finishing a master's, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I love teaching. And I ended up applying to teach at local high schools. And I got a job at a private high school. And I jokingly call it reverse Teach for America. That's what I did when I was a kid. Because it was like, you have this lower middle class Black kid teaching really bougie white kids. So it's like the exact inverse of Teach for America. They were all my Aarons and Balakis. And so Jake Clellens. And I was like, so it was a great moment to be like 22, 23, 24 with dreadlocks that I had pulled up in a weird high bun. It was 2006. I don't know. And I got to learn about if I wanted to do this. Like, why do I care about history? What is it? And I did that for 2.5 years. And I was like, this is the jam. This is what I love doing. And I was like, maybe I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I was like, no, I want to think about these concepts. I want to push myself. I want to think more about this. And so I maintain, and I feel like you'll feel me on this, John. I maintain that I made the best poor life choice. So when I talk to friends, I say that going to graduate school, especially doing a PhD, is firmly within the genre of poor life choice. Now, for me, it was the best poor life choice, but I often think of it in every way. You are choosing to then adopt for 5 to 7 years at best a world in which what people don't know, and I think it's really important to let people know, is for most academic PhDs, right? Unlike law or med school, academic PhDs are funded. If you are getting into a program where you are not funded for a PhD, run from that program. It is predatory and it's filled with witchcraft. But most of these programs are funded, but that does not mean that you are funded well. Like, it means that it is paid for, and then you get a stipend. And so from 2008 to 2014, I made $16,000 a year. And so I could eat and I could pay
rent.
I
want to I think, not to cut you off, but I also want to name, while you're talking about that too, keep in mind that we're also, in 2008, we were just hitting that recession. So I also want to frame that, because I think it's important to note that we really didn't get out of that recession until like maybe 2012. But go off. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the wildest part is, right, that meant that I left a solid middle-class job of being a high school teacher, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's solid. It was affordable, and I didn't make a lot, but I made a lot more than that. And I left it in June of 2008, and the bottom fell out of the economy in August of 2008 as I stepped foot onto graduate school. And I was like, did I fuck up real bad?
We did.
Did I? Because I was like, the bottom fell out of like a sad fast food paper bag, and just everything fell out. And I was like, and so I left it. And so then I was making $60,000 a year for 6 years. And my Black ass moved from San Diego to Urbana, Illinois. And so I was surrounded by corn and the Heights and much soybean. And I was like, this is my life. But I will say that, like, it transformed my life, right? Like, I spent 3 years intensively learning Zulu. I moved to South Africa for one of those years and did only exclusive research in Zulu for my PhD. And I became a critical colonial historian of Africa. And it opened up a whole new world in my career for me. But I maintain that I think it's really important for people to recognize it's always a poor life choice.
Out of necessity.
But sometimes for us, that's the best and most
so
important
much out of necessity. I appreciate you saying that. And we're going to dig more into that into the next segment. But Joho, what for you made you say, like, I have to go to college?
Yeah, I think it was just something I just always knew I was going to do. Like, whether I wanted to or not, it was just like, it was definitely decided for me. My parents were like, you're going to go to college. There was no discussion of how we'll afford college, but you're going to go to college. Or I guess I'd say like bless my I had one grandparent who had like started college fund for me and had put into that. Bless her soul, it paid for one semester of college. But like, may his memory be a blessing in many
Right,
ways.
right.
And like, listen, that semester was paid for, and that is the one semester less I had to pay for with loans.
Right.
And so that I appreciate. But yeah, like I got a few scholarships, but I think I just always knew I was going to go because my parents. You know, it's like similar, similar to TJ having, being mixed. Like I had two parents who had such different lives. But I will say none of them. I don't actually know if either of them ever finished. I don't know if either of them finished school themselves, and I don't know if my dad ever
Mhm.
went beyond a high school education. If he even went to that, I also
Right.
don't honestly, like, we never discussed his education at all growing up. And so, and like my mom's family is really small, and my aunt had got her degree, but she had got her BA in psychology, then her BA in being a Mrs. As my aunt would often joke that
Found her
was
husband.
made to she
Yes.
was made to find a husband
Mhm.
instead, which is sad because
Yes.
my aunt's like a really special person. I'm just like, oh, she was not pushed to marry out of college. She probably could have like been like a dope ass professional and never got to have that chance. So I feel like that's
Yeah.
something my heart hurts for her on that one. And then my mom, I don't know. I know she's a class, but I don't know if she ever finished, but she like was launched to her career, and so in some ways I had an interesting model of two parents who were able to find good, meaningful jobs that they really enjoyed and appreciated without having to obtain to obtain a college degree. But they were like, we don't want that for you, and
Mm.
we want you to get an education because it was hard for us, and we have struggled, and we are struggling. Like, I think there are some things that my parents both knew without maybe it's not for my mom and my dad, because my dad worked in labor, and so I think for him it wasn't as necessary. But for my mom, I think she was mindful of ways in which
Mhm.
having that degree would may have leveled her up more. And so I kind of always knew it. And then I think when my brother, right above me in age, when he graduated, I think he's the first person. I honestly think the first person, like of my siblings, that had gotten his degree, and I was like, I definitely want to do this as well too. It was just drilled into me that if I want to be somebody and I want to go somewhere, I better wake up and go get my
Wake up and
education.
pay
That was
attention.
okay, get my education and call that a good
Yes.
day. And so that is what I had did. But I also think the motivation. I mean, I will say what's motivated me. I think what's interesting that people don't always talk about like the schools in which they go to. I was like that motivation too, because people have their ideal schools, and
Yeah.
then they have their
Yeah.
backup schools. And like the school I went to was not my first choice of a school. And it was a choice. It was a school that I just was like, I'll just go because my like best friend goes here as well too. And that school was the first school that accepted me very quickly, which was very surprising. But also, like, I got into many of my other schools I wanted to go to, but this school just like felt kismet to want to go to this one. And look at how my my life has unfolded. Like, it was gonna be between Long Beach or moving back up to the Bay for me. And I was like, I think I'm gonna try to stay in SoCal and go to Long Beach and not move
Yeah.
back to the Bay. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, truly, if I did not do that, right, John, you and I would have never met. I probably would not even be in San Diego right now still. Like, so
Yeah.
many things
3
would
years
have changed.
later,
And so I
right?
have
Yeah.
so much gratitude of of the choice I made and the power of choice I had in that, because also privileged to have had choice in choosing where I can go to
Mhm.
from my acceptances. But yeah, so I'll just say, higher education, I knew it was going to be for me, but now I'm in a place where I am teetering. Do I want to go? Do I want to pursue an advanced degree or not? And now I'm in a place of, will this actually help my career more or no? Like, I honestly don't know, because in my field there are ways in which it can, but it really just helps like salary versus like helping like job function. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Yeah.
like what like what's the balance of, do I need to do this? And part of me also wants to do it because I want to learn more. I want to engage in an advanced degree. I want to engage in a different class. I want to I want to pursue this program that focuses on like social justice
Yeah.
and social innovation. So I'm like, I want to do these
Mhm.
things, but also it's just expensive and it's time consuming. That's just
Mhm.
exhausting. And right now I ain't got a man to pay for it, and I can't, and I'm not trying
Right.
to like work full time and go to school full time,
Right.
baby.
Come on
In this
now.
economy,
And
no,
and
no, no,
and
no.
the
So
interest is interesting. And so I will say,
interesting.
yes, interesting. And so I will say, so I'm glad you left off on that point, because we're going to get into that in the next segment. All right, y'all. So we are going to have to take a quick break. But with that being said, I'm going to go shoot off some of these angry messages to Joe Biden about the promises he made around my student loans. And with that, we're going to take a black fat break. We'll be back in a jiffy.
Okay, y'all, we are back, and for today's seggy, the category is Blackademia, or the intersection of blackness in academia. We're going to talk about the joys and struggles of being black in higher education, and also what we've all learned about being black and queer in academia. Now, we have not one, but 2 doctorates on this show, baby, 2 doctors in the house. So we couldn't not get this conversation as well as its intersections. For today's first question, I want to ask you, TJ, and I'm changing it up a little bit because you dressed it a little bit in your in the last segment. I want to know what's been a defining moment in your career as a black and queer educator.
Oh shit. Okay, that's a great question, right? Because well, I think one of the things that we have to think about first, right? If you're talking about the intersections, right? We don't get to hide our identities. And one of the things that's important to talk about if you decide to get a PhD, and if you decide to stay in academia as the choice, right? You have the best way to think about this is your career is like a hot air balloon. You don't have the full navigating capabilities. A hot air balloon goes up, it has the heat, and it is sort of carried by the currents. You have an idea of how you're going to end and land. You hope you end well as you decrease the heat. It's not like a helicopter, right? And so similarly, when you get a degree, you have a choice. Now you've gotten this expensive thing that fills you with exhaustion and hope. And now you have to hope you get a job. And I think one of the most important things to think about first is that when I went on the job market, which is way worse now, I went on the job market 10 years ago, or 2013, and I applied to 103 jobs. And I got 4 on-campus interviews, which was unheard of and amazing. And I got 2 offers. And that was also unheard of, right? But I picked the best offer, which meant my black ass did not move back to California. I moved to rural Virginia. And I taught at a school called Washington and Lee. And you may guess that the Washington is George, correct. Did you figure that the Lee is Robert E? Because the Lee is Robert E.
The whites of the whites. Yes. The whites of the whites.
You know. You don't want to know.
You don't want to
know.
Right. And my high yellow ass is the blackest thing there. Right, I am suddenly Nicodemus, right? Like there are like 3 other black folk. Like there were literally 3 other black faculty. Out of 200, right? Robert E. Lee is buried on the campus.
Did not know that.
Stonewall Jackson is buried in the town. I need to remind people in my job as their newly hired African historian that enslaved Africans built the campus. And that white kids went there with their enslaved people carrying their bags for 120 years. So I say this to say, like, one of the defining moments is I started at 30 in 2014 as a brand new professor in Confederatlandia, like in an actual Cracker Barrel. Like, and I was like, okay. I went to Confederate Hogwarts for a job.
Confederate Hogwarts. Oh, I want to name the episode that I'm sorry. I know I can't, but go off.
It's the best. So I arrive at Confederate Hogwarts as their newly freed professor. And so I get there and I spent 4 years there as a tenure track professor. Tenure is a 6-year process. You have to excel in all levels there. And I lived 40 miles outside of Charlottesville. And Charlottesville was the big town that we were excited to go to. The town that my university was in had 6,000 people. And after a year, I moved to another town that had 20,000 that was 30 miles away and outside Charlottesville. But also, I had to explain that, like, to teach African history at this place, it felt every day like a little bit of a cheese grater was nicking my soul. Just a bit. But you only have so much salt. And I was like, this is going to be, I don't have infinite. And so this is 2014 to 2018. So 2017, Charlottesville takes place while I'm there as a professor, right? And one of the things is I had to have this hard question of what do I do as someone who is not thin, and I was much larger too, so I was fat, black, and queer in Confederatlandia, in a space where my body did not fit. I thought a lot about what did it mean to live and move through a space where you were never imagined. We talk about in academia how we were never imagined to be there, but I was on a literal
plantation.
ass
Yeah.
plantation. So of course
Yeah.
I was never imagined to
Mm-hmm.
be a faculty member. And it made me sharper in my intellectual curiosity. It made the urgency of the work I do as someone who interrogates race and gender and colonialism. It made the mentoring of my queer and Black and first generation students meaningful. And it also made me a little bit, I mean, it traumatized me and left me a little bit bitter. And it gives me a moment of having to think about, sometimes I disproportionately react to things. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, trauma, I missed you. What's going on here? Hey, girl.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
2014 to 2018. And so I've spent the last 6 years here. So I've been a professor for 10 years. And I stand back and I think moving back to San Diego in 2018 was phenomenal. And it was life transforming. And yet, and I think this goes back to some things that John said, I'm never going to pretend that academia is not a shell game or a scam. I can breathe better here, but I also know there are ways in which universities are profoundly exploitative places. And in this year, we've been talking about how often universities seem more like hedge funds that occasionally teach classes, that are uninterested in the survival of their students, as we've seen in a lot of the reactions to protests, right? And so one of the things that came out of this, though, to answer this more directly, is the work I do is important and meaningful, and dare I say, deeply challenging. But I also have to remember that it is not inherently revolutionary. And I want to be real clear about this. It's not inherently revolutionary to teach these things in a place in where my teaching is translated into a series of blocks that give students credits towards something that is only meaningful because other people can't have it. Right? A degree is only valuable because other people can't have them. We think about the family members we had who didn't have degrees, but their inability to have them is what made other people's degrees meaningful. And so I always want to think, I get to teach revolutionary and important things. Yes, but it's not inherently liberatory to do it from a space that brings that in a discrepancy. And so I tell my students, I was like, we're going to learn badass shit. It's going to be so amazing. I love it. And you're going to be on fire. But I don't want you to mistake this for genuine transformation. It's like I've given you tools and you're like, I'm a carpenter. Ma'am, that is a hammer in your hand. You are not a carpenter, right? You got to do things.
No, that's, I love that you say that. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure that I highlight in this conversation as folks are listening is also the notion of like education teaching you duality, right? And so it's like there's so much duality in education, and also being a Blackademic, right? You have to, and you even talk about like the concept of liberation, right? It's recognizing, I think that's something that I've had to learn. And everyone knows kind of like how I got my story, right? So right as you were coming here to, UC, San Diego, I'm I'm being ousted out of an opportunity here locally. And it's still one of those things that I still have to like kind of, I go back and forth with, because I talk about it, this notion, when people tend to ask me about it, I don't talk too publicly about it, but what I will say is that I know for me, one of the things that I had to reckon with was the feeling of knowing that higher ed was so abusive to me up to that point, and knowing that I was still in higher ed because I was, again, my mind was, I'm here for the Johos, I'm here for the little Dr. John Pauls, right, that needed me in higher ed. So I know that, but then at the same time, I'm also watching the politics and the business and all of the stuff play out. And so I think, like, when you say duality, right, there's still this notion of me saying education is good and it's essential and it's necessary and it's needed. However, I think that the thing that I've challenged, and I've been telling my students as well as anyone who listens to the show, that you still need to critique higher ed. It's kind of like James Baldwin said, right? I love America. I love America, and that's why I critique her. And so I think education is the same way, right? Like, I can love education and I can love what it affords, and I love the fact that I would say both of us, I love that we're still there. But there's still a part of me that says there's so much that needs to be critiqued around how higher ed is ran, especially when it comes to Black and queer students. So I have seen, this is where this question comes from, I have seen so many people lauding Black and queer folks for, and what I've been saying is surviving higher ed, right? Like, basically surviving higher ed, and especially those who go to do their PhD. And I part of me is so joyful because I'm like, thank God you got out. Like, thank God that this institution didn't ruin you or harm you or cause you to cause harm to yourself. But then there's the other part of me that's like, if only these babies knew what they were getting themselves into. Like, we talk about the degree and we talk about the success and all of that stuff, right? Oh yeah, you finished. But no one talks to the babies about, and I say babies lovingly, no one talks to the babies about what's going to come their way with having that PhD or that ED. So I wanted to ask you, like, no one talks about this journey. What did you learn in your journey in regards to helping protect yourself, both in and out of the classroom? And what advice would you have for maybe a new graduate or a new PhD baby who's listening to the show and is getting ready to go out into the world? I know that was a loaded question.
Oh my God, that's a beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful.
No, it's fucking beautiful,
Okay.
and I'm excited to answer it. So, I'm gonna take my cues from some Black women. And so I think of Claudia Rankine, and I think of Brittany Cooper. And so when Claudia Rankine wrote Citizen, she writes this really particular, amazing poem about what it was like to be a Black professor in the era of Trayvon Martin. And she's like, and I go home and I drink too much wine and I think I'm gonna be okay, and I do it again. And I was like, oh. And I was sitting reading that poem on my couch my first year in Confederate Hogwarts, and I was on my third glass of wine. I didn't need to be read by a book like that. It was disrespectful and, dare I say, churlish. But I think similarly, Brittany Cooper thinks about how we get these tools, and then they also don't explain how, especially for those of us who are single and trying to be out there, how do we get chose? How do we also, as we're dealing with all this work, also feeling the loneliness of being in a place that doesn't desire us, and also trying to be desired out there in this world? And she writes a lot about that in Eloquent Rage, and it hits me in my heart. I think the best piece of advice I can say is that I'm working right now on a series of literally professor pedagogical tools at the University of San Diego, and they're called Teaching Your Humanity. So they're aimed for queer or I'd say women, people of color, disabled, trans people. If you are teaching in a field that is literally about your identity, and so I'm a Black person, and a queer person often teaches Black and queer classes, I am in the space where I am actually charged with teaching my humanity to people who don't always have to acknowledge it. And we don't usually have the words to say that out loud, that it's an additional burden. And this is no shade to a lot of my like STEM brothers and sisters. Like, I have a friend of mine who's an amazing Black chemist, and he has his own struggles, right? But like, I'm literally teaching about like slavery or colonialism and anti-Blackness, and I also have to get, theoretically, in a classroom, to get white kids to care about it.
Right.
And so one of the things that I want to be really clear about is, at the end of the day, my job, not now, not ever, and your job, John Paul, your job, Joho, and your job, beautiful person listening, is actually not to end racism. And I want to be really clear about this because that sounds counterintuitive. Racism existed before your ass was born, and racism is going to continue after your ass is gone. It is absurd, and if you think about it, moderately narcissistic to imagine that you Kunta Kinte, are the one magical Negro who has been chosen for this divine and highly favored time to end the racism. Now, we do this cognitively for the dissonance of, if I'm doing this, it must have a meaning. But then we put on it the responsibility that I must end homophobia. I must end misogyny. I must end. No, that's actually not my ministry. My ministry is to give people some tools and to be out there. And that is enough. And because I found myself 3 years in, dejected and enraged, shockingly, that at Confederate Hogwarts, it was still racist. As if I was Larry Potter, the magical.
Did you say Larry Potter?
No,
I am dead. I'm so dead.
You know what? Hakeem Potter is here. And I'm just like,
Larry Potter. I live.
And so, right. So I'm just like, we can't. Our natural assumption is that as we do this work, and especially if it's race work, but if it's anything, you feel like your job, and the university will lie to you. They will lie to you and let you assume that it is your job to do structural change. And it is never, never, ever your job to do structural change. Structural change is not actually your job. You want to do it and you're welcome to do as much as you like, but that's not actually your remit. And I think as you start this job, let these words weirdly echo in your head a year, 2 years, 6 years from now, and think of this weirdo in front of you. But like, that's not your job. And there's something weirdly freeing, beautifully freeing about feeling like my job is not to end racism, because it will always be there. And that doesn't mean I shouldn't try, but it also means that I'm not responsible for when it inevitably still exists. And then I hate myself on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m.
That's a whole word.
It's not
a whole word. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and I guess the last thing I really want to say this, because I think about this a lot, is for Black academics especially, we believe that we must always be fucking exceptional. We must always be exceptional. And the real root of this is we, on some level, need to justify why we exist in a space that is not ready for us, does not believe we should exist, and is not here for us. And so I say this often in like workshops, and then people cry, and I'm like, no, we need to hear it all the time. Excellence is not the rent you pay in existing in a space that was not built for you. Excellence is not the rent you pay to live there. You should just be there, and you don't have to justify it by being flawless. And so I want to release you from the sense of feeling like you must be excellent. Please enjoy a mediocre Thursday. Some days you're going to be low rent, and that's okay.
I tell you right now, as a comm major, because I love that you say that, because I get a lot, and not to take away from your question, Joho, but I think one of the things that I hear a lot is, with Dr. Higgins, you don't publish and you don't do this and you don't do that. How do you deal with, and I go, I don't publish because I don't want to. I don't care. Like it's not to say that it's not important. It is important. Someone needs to do it. But I personally feel like it's not my job to constantly always be thinking about publishing and doing, like, it's just not me. It's not who I am. And so I think, like, I love that you say, like, you have you can have a PhD and still be a basic bitch too. It's okay.
I mean, it's also
Please.
It's interesting you say it, John, because I mean, like, you publish all the time still, right? Like, I know people obviously just mean it as like you don't publish scholarly. And part of me is like, but who decides whether it's scholarly or not? Like, the bitch is publishing, period. So, and like, you can read the articles and still be like, that bitch is a scholar still. So I'm like, so that's just, I mean, it was interesting because it's my conversation I had like at work about the difference between and I have to be careful like how I say this because it's about my job, but like how, like, the difference between writing, getting published in a publication that isn't scholarly, and the difference between, like, and then like them being seen as like acceptable to be scholarly. And part of me was like, why is it so important to you? Why is this your version of freedom, is that you are held the same regard as like these white folks and what they gatekeep. And I don't fully understand why. And I also have to remind myself, like, if that's what freedom is to them, it's not my place to challenge their freedom. Like, if I believe that we all deserve everything, period, then they deserve to do whatever makes them feel most liberated. So like, see that. But there's interesting things, I think we get held up as like if it's something's done in a scholarly way, it makes it more legitimate and valid. And I'm like, but it does, like it doesn't. Like, at the end of the day, it's all going to be subjective anyways. Like,
and baby, let me tell you, I was gonna say, I know a lot of people who publish and are dumb as a box of rocks. So I just want to make sure
like,
that I name that.
Should not be publishing. Like, just don't publish at all. So like, so yeah. So I just like, I just want to hold that with you and be like, you publish, period. And people can get mad all they want that you aren't publishing in this journal, but like, the girl is writing, okay, and she has a book, so bitch is publishing, period.
Yes.
Also, one thing that I'll say, but I want to say before I get into my question, like, as y'all were speaking with the last question, I was thinking a lot about like, oh, this is like the difference between education being a right and it not being a right. Because like, if education was an inherent right, and then it would be inherently like not capitalistic and not competitive and like blah blah blah, which is so sad, because that is what like capitalism will breed competition and I mean, let me take a step back. It will still be capitalistic because everything will be regardless. But capitalism breeds competition, and the idea right now that we have of higher education is that you have to compete to be seen, and then compete to excel, then compete to be excellent, and then compete to graduate. And it's all like under the under this guise of like having the privilege to attend higher education, having the privilege to have a scholarship, the privilege to afford it, the privilege to do these things, and it makes me think so much of like, oh my god, like if education was just a right, all these universities would have like nothing to stand on. Then, like all these universities would have nothing to stand on with all that they tout for themselves if it was just a right. And that's and to me, I'm like that. I'm like as I just said, I was just like, ugh, like how gross it is to live in this world right now where these things could be a right for people because everyone deserves to have an education if they want it. Everyone deserves to have education accessible to them and something that helps and supports them in life. But then
affordable education at that. But go off.
I mean, I think free education, period. I think it should be free.
Government,
yes. If you can send millions of dollars to other countries in ammunition and things, you can pay for education. I'm just saying, like, there's the budget is always there for some reason. I'm just saying, you always say we're broke, but we keep finding money to give to other countries. So I just need to know what's happening with the
everybody
with
in the Ukraine got a whole bunch of money, girl, but we can't do
the funding,
girl. But
right?
Okay,
anyways,
go off, girl.
Here nor there. But yeah, it's just like a moment where I'm like, ugh, like it's sad to think about that. And also TJ Holding was saying like, okay, I can understand that. And also it doesn't have to be like my job to actually end that system because that system will not end regardless whether as much as I work as I do, it will not end because that system exists for a reason and it will continue to exist until somehow there is an eradication of the systems. But who's to say how that happens? My question for you though.
Before you ask that question, I really felt like needed to be said. We also have to remember too that a part of white supremacy is making Black and brown and queer people feel like it is their job to end systems that have been set up,
and not themselves as the ones who put the system.
And the gag is to tire you out. I just wanted to say, like, for folks who have not heard that, the game is if I can get you to be so exhausted and so tired out and to die early and to do all of basically to eradicate you, right, by making you believe that, then I've won, right? So I just wanted to say that too. That I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, thank you. And I mean, to white folks, are you not tired of being gatekeeper? Like is it not actually exhausting to do this? Like it actually must be exhausting to continually be like, no, put that fence back up. Like, girl, I'm not tired of doing it, but whatever. My question for you, TJ,
right.
Who is something I want to ask you? One, because I particularly have an interest in the school as myself as well too. But knowing that I find it interesting that there are institutions that are faith based, but how do you balance a personal of like your personal culture and your personal self with the culture of institution, knowing that it is a religious institution? And what have you learned then during your time there about how to balance that, both for yourself as a person who, as an educator, but also as like who teaches students these things? Like, how do students also like how can they navigate this themselves?
Oh, I love that. So for those who aren't familiar, I teach at the University of San Diego, which is a private Catholic school, which is amazing in some ways because it's people immediately assume when I say Catholic school, they either think like Benedictine College, where Harrison Bucker just did a whole lot this past week, or they think of like Notre Dame, where there's a particularly hardline Catholicism. And fortunately for me, that's not the case. But it is a place, and I will say that because it is a faith institution, one of the things I love most actually about it is that Catholic social teaching gives you a lot of wiggle room. Catholic social teaching actually allows me to say and do things that necessarily I wouldn't necessarily be able to do. It's a claimed shared language. So yes, we know the obvious parts about it being sort of potentially limiting in terms of students come in there potentially to come to a school in which they want to feel slightly conservative values are going to be reaffirmed. But what I love specifically about a Catholic social teaching tradition is that there is a lengthy, well-documented history of social justice and like trade unionism and civil rights and queer rights. And we can, and I'm not going to enter, I'm not an apologist for the Catholic Church, so don't worry. But what I love is that, so don't get it twisted. I don't work, I work for them, but I don't work for them. But like, is that it allows me a space to do work where I really push for justice and transformation and say, and people come from me, they're like I've had external people say like, well, this isn't feel right. And I was like, Catholic social teaching, and people are like, but like the sense of this gives wiggle room in that way on a sort of cynical level where I can do emotional judo where I'm like, I'm going to use your heft against you. But what that also means is that students that are coming in are also, it's a space where they are often much more open about their own spiritual and personal needs, where they're like, I am a fully spiritual person. That's a part of who I am. And so I think about with them, I am not interested in asking in any way for you to sidestep your spirituality here. I want you to engage that with all the other parts of you. And that may mean a crying out for justice. That may also mean a rigorous self-examination. That may also mean holding space for other people's hurt. And so I ask myself, I say this openly, I teach a class this semester, which is amazing. I love what I get to do. I teach a class called Queering Colonialism, where students think about how gender and sexuality are shaped by histories of colonialism. And one of the weirdest things that Washington and Lee prepared me for was teaching at the University of San Diego, a campus that was built in 1949, specifically in San Diego as a Catholic campus to look like a Spanish mission. Yeah. And for me, that's not it. Right? Like, I'm like, what does it mean for me to have gone from the plantation to the mission? And I was like, no change, right? Like, what does it mean for me to think about? So I refer to it routinely at my job as I work at a genocidal cosplay institution. And every time I say it, people wince dramatically. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, did the truth burn you? But like the sense of, what does it mean for us to cosplay beige and terracotta tiles if you don't want to think about whose bones built these, right? Like, and so that enables us, actually, ironically, the desire to push into the spiritual dimension allows me to say, well, spirituality is also not immaterial. It is about people's real bodies and lives. And the very same spirituality we're attempting to access also had physical consequences for people. So that is a way where I ask people, I was like, I ask your faith be real. And I'm here for it. I'm not asking you to shut it off, but I want you to sit with its own materiality. I want the materiality of your faith to be real. And again, our campus is not, it is a Catholic institution, but it is also very happily sort of interfaith. So one of the things that we did this year is our students haven't done encampments, and I want to respect whatever choices my students make. But one of the things that the students did in coordination with other factors on campus is that they held a interfaith requiem for the dead and dying in Gaza. And I thought that was such a profoundly beautiful, meaningful moment where they were like, they had Christian Orthodox, they had Catholics, they had Muslims, they had some Jewish speakers who were like, we want to think about this space of holding space for human beings who are dying. And it's much harder to sort of politicize that in a space. People tried and people did it, I'll tell you. But like in majority, the space was like, it was an emotional judo in which, oh, you think yourself above this because you're a weird boutique college that looks like a mission that thinks you're above this sort of thing. Well, we're going to use this and we're going to hold your faith accountable to you. And so for me, doing the work here is I welcome and I get excited about it because it can be, right? My body is queer and Black. And when we talk about later, like I dress in ways that are provocative to challenge what people see. And people that came here looking for comfort and being reaffirmed, they're about to have a bad time because my job is actually instead to take your faith seriously, but not your faith seriously in a way that says, okay, then your faith then must be protected as this sort of magical gauzy thing. I'm like, your faith is real and it exists in a material world. How do we think about the heft, the fleshiness, the materiality of your faith? And that is the fun part about having a double major in history and religion. I'm like, gotcha.
I know that's right. And I really, what I love in all of this is what I heard you saying a lot of in this, right, is this notion of, it's something that I've always been kind of really big on in my own head, right? Like education should be about interrogating the things that you believe to be true. And I love that you're saying, like, as much as, this is the reality of what this institution is, but now you need to come in and you need to interrogate it and you need to ask yourself, why are you here? And also, along with asking, why are you here? What have you been led to believe to be true in regards to all of the things that you've been fed throughout your life, and how are you going to make that for yourself? So I shout out to professors like yourself, who I think are really, what I like to say, is doing the work, because a lot of professors, and I'll be transparent in saying that, even for me at one point, I was just going to work, right? I was just going to work. I was giving the students information, and I just basically was like, just get this info and go home. But there are times, right, when you really
Yeah.
stop and you think about, if I'm not going to be here to challenge these students to think higher, because again, it's called higher learning, it's called higher education.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to challenge the stuff that they've come in with, right, or I'm not going to challenge the system that honestly is benefiting off a lot of Black and brown and queer students, then I'm doing a disservice to a lot of the students. And so that's why, like, even this last semester, I was telling my students, like, please critique me as a teacher, please critique university, please interrogate all of the stuff that you believe to be true coming into this class, because the reality is that is what higher learning is. So I absolutely love that. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask before we take a quick break is really thinking about something that Joho mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, right? Black and queer and fat folks who are in the mind of, like, I have a BA and maybe I didn't finish, or I have a master's and I didn't finish it, or I want to do a master's, or I want to do a PhD, but nothing right now is telling me that I should be in a program, right? Like, everything feels very much in the mind of, like, girl, you might be doing it for you. And that's something I also tell a lot of students too. Like, your heart really has to be in it, especially if you're going to do a PhD, because PhDs are inherently, and I hate saying this out loud, but it feels like hazing at times. It feels very much like hazing,
Yes,
in the sense that there are academics who really want to see how far they can push you before you say, this isn't for me, I'm out of here. So, like, knowing that, my immediate answer when people ask me, should I go get my PhD? I always say no, because I never say no and leave it at no. I always say no because of X, Y, and Z. However, you need to make a decision for yourself. But I guess the question that I want to ask you is, what did you learn from your program? And if you could, would you do it again?
I'm going to answer the second one first. I absolutely would. I absolutely would. And the weird part is I went into my PhD having done a master's, so I knew it was going to be hard and I knew it was going to be bullshit, right? So one of the best things that I had been told in my master's was this Lorena, this amazing chain-smoking Latina in the hallway at
Yes,
UCSD
shout out to
trained me,
Lorena.
and she was like mid-drag of a cigarette and was just like, DJ, if you haven't wanted to quit at least 3 times in a semester, you are not a real grad student. And that was like the most gospel thing I've ever heard, because I was like, oh, if I want to quit, I must be doing it wrong. No, like, that was it. So I went into the PhD thinking, okay, I know it's going to be hard. And I was still not prepared for it. Is a profoundly lonely experience. It is emotionally excruciating. And also, it's optional. You ain't got to do this. You ain't got to do this. And you have to face that, right? It's optional. And there is no shame in quitting it. It's optional. And so, but I look back, and what I got out of it was, cynically, first off, an incredible language base. I learned an entire African language. I'm fluent and I work in isiZulu, a Southern African language. I got to immerse myself in, multiple countries and cultures and do the work that I do. But really, for me, there was, and I'll relate this back to when students ask me why I do this, is that I was 24 and I was a high school teacher in San Diego, and I thought I could do this for the rest of my life. And it's 2008, and I thought, imagine 2014. And I was like, okay, you'll be 30. And I was like, all right. And they're like, imagine you've been doing this job and you love it, but now you feel like the window has passed for you getting a PhD. What will you feel? And I said, regret. And I was like, oh shit. And it would be like, because I didn't push myself to do the thing that I wanted to do. I kept it safe, and I didn't do this particular challenge. Now, I say this to say, the thing that I have to say to, especially those of you in the humanities, when you're a PhD in humanities, God bless, because what? And so we tell ourselves, if you want to get a PhD in this, there needs to be a mix of profound optimism and soul-crushing narcissism. And by this, I mean, you need to come at this with saying, there is a question that needs to be answered that is fundamentally important and can only be answered by me. And And I want to be clear, you will not feel
Right.
this all of the time. Sometimes you'll be like, I lied, I'm dumb. I have a PhD. I am a tenured professor, and sometimes I'm like, maybe this was dumb. So, but I would say that ultimately, like I sat there and I was like, I want to think about how race and gender, specifically how masculinity gets created in colonial context. How do people claim to belong? And I was like, I want to think about settlement and colonialism like in the United States, but from the perspective of doing the work in South Africa, grounding Black people and Native people. I want to do that. And no one else is really equipped to do that in that way. I want to be that one. And that was what kept me warm some nights, because it's cold in Illinois. And I was like, how do I hold myself to that? And sometimes I wanted to quit. At one point, I was absolutely thinking about quitting it. And I called my mom and I was like, what would it look like if I move home? And she was like, I will always love and support you, but also think about this. And I really did. I sat and wrestled with it multiple times. I think there has to be that passion and that sense of these questions need to be answered by me. It is a terrible idea to go to graduate school because you don't know what to do next.
Amen.
That is equivalent to I'm getting married because I don't know what to do next. I'm having a baby because I don't know what to do next. Like, I mean, those things may work out, but it's a terrible idea because it's just out of go watch TV, right? Like, but like this is doing it because it seems like the next logical thing is a terrible idea. But doing it because you have something that is meaningful to you, that's the important idea. And it also, you don't have to have it fully fleshed out, but you need to be grappling towards it. And that, because graduate school is going into, this is a weirdly butch metaphor for all of us, me included, but it's like going into a hardware store to do a project. I know. But like, it's like picking out lumber and tools and just being like, I don't know, I like building. What the fuck, bitch? You're just going to waste a bunch of time and money, right? Like, but you have to imagine at least, I'm building a birdhouse. I'm building whatever. Like, but you need to, because graduate school is a Home Depot. Like, you're literally, they're giving you tools to build something. And if you're not sure what you're building, you're just there for shiggles, then you're gonna leave with $400,000 worth of things and not build shit. So
that's real. I love that you say shiggles, because so do I. That's one of my favorite words. Shiggles is one of my favorite words. Right. You've never heard that before?
Take me out, shiggles. I immediately knew what you meant.
Yeah,
and I was like, I have never thought shiggles. That's so genius. Shiggles, just for shiggles.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, y'all. Woo. Now that I am rethinking everything that I know about education,
you should.
I had to take we got to take a short break, y'all, to pay these sponsors and maybe some loans. We'll be back with your favorite segment, Yes Ma'am and No Ma'am Pam, in just a sec.
All right, y'all. So we are jumping into y'all's favorite segment, Yes Ma'am and No Ma'am Pam. And this week, I don't know if I really want to start this week. Joho, do you want to go?
I'm gagged. Okay. Sure. I do. I had no plans to start first, mainly because I want to marry a little more on mine, so I changed it last minute. But today we'll just make it work. First, I have two Yes Ma'am Pams. The first one is I just have to give flowers to our guest TJ, Dr. Professor Tallie, because this has just been like truly, seriously one of my favorite episodes that we've done thus far. Like, I really have to say that. Like, no shade to anybody else, but like, which I mean, I already knew from jump that it would be, but it like it's the critical thinking, it's the quips, it's the shiggles for me. Like, everything is just like, TJ, one thing I've always loved and appreciated about you is that you have such, and I truly mean this, a profound ability to like take the deepest, hard, rough shit and like make it fucking funny at the same time, which is like which is a powerful tool, right? Because like humor is important, and like you aren't being humorous at the sake, you aren't being humorous like at the cost of acknowledging what's deep and meaningful. You hold them both together, and that is a skill that not truly not many can do, and you do it so well. And it's just like I have learned so critically in this episode, as much as I have like literally just like snickered my ass off, like
Yeah.
like it's just
That was
so,
me.
you're so fucking
Mhm.
good. So thank you, just thank you, and really you deserve your flowers so much for being an incredible educator, an incredible inspiration, like a truly, and I mean it when I say local legend. Like, people fucking know who you are, and not just locally, but an international sensation. Like, people know you. And I will say one thing I think about a lot in Ju- Judaism, in the like our like the law of ethics. There is this saying "Ketach Shem Tov," which is like the crown of a good name is superior to all, and like truly, like, you're someone that embodies that for me. Like, the crown of your good name is superior to all, and people like you have a good reputation because you are a great person, and everyone knows that about you. And so it's special. It really is a special gift to like witness you and know you, and just in this episode to experience you as well. So yes, ma'am,
Mhm.
to you. All the flowers to you. My second yes, ma'am, is just to continue to praise the students who are exercising like their rights to gather, and their
Mhm.
rights to critique things. I really have to be careful what I say because of my job, but like their right to critique things.
Same here.
And, you know, and
Everybody
it's like
knows. They know. Yeah, they
it's
know.
it's some shit that I'm like, this is like, it's some shit that I'm like, oh, like this is it's some shit that I would have that I would have been so like so game to do if I was in school. And I
Yeah.
have spent time doing some of these things with folks. If I can say in a vague way, I spent some time at some of these, demonstrations, if one could say. And it's really just yes ma'am to y'all, because y'all, like, people will shit on y'all and say, what are y'all doing? Why are y'all doing this?
Mhm.
Like what do y'all know? These conversations don't belong on campus. But I'm like, this is actually the place where this is where they should be at, because
Right.
these are people who these are literally the people who will like change our world in
Yes.
like 5 to 10 years. So this is the right place for them to be at the right
Mhm.
time. So just yes ma'am Pam to y'all. My
Ca
no ma'am Pam is to one thing only. It is fuck Diddy forever on the side of the
Yes.
tracks.
Yes.
Period. That's all I got to say. It was fuck Diddy for a long time anyways, but after
Yeah.
seeing that video where everyone now
Mhm.
was like,
Mhm.
I can't believe this
Amen.
happened. You can't believe this
Amen.
happened. You can't believe this happened. Like,
Amen.
interesting, because
Yeah.
we all believed it already beforehand.
Amen.
And y'all
Yes.
y'all you didn't see the video to see it, but like now you know what we all know. So it's fucking
Mhm.
forever on this other tracks. And I really again, I hold of like, I never want to pray for another black person to be incarcerated, or black or brown person to be incarcerated whatsoever.
Right.
And I do pray that there is a sense of restoration and actual justice that happens in the situation.
Yeah.
Um, and
And my
like
heart, I was gonna say my heart is with Cassie too, like,
I was gonna say,
knowing
like, in
that there's
healing for
public.
Cassie,
Yes.
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 healing for
Yes.
anybody who has been impacted,
Yes.
and harmed by this person, that
Mhm.
there's healing for them.
Yeah. I agree. I was going to say, to your point, Joho, I think it's imperative to note. So everybody who listens to the show knows where we stand and know how we've been, they know what side of the street they own when they come over to the Black Fact Film podcast. But what I will say in a very roundabout way is, a lot of folks are saying, oh, this shouldn't be on campus and this shouldn't be. Baby, a lot of the programs that you probably used while you were in college were started by people marching. Okay, sit-ins. A lot of the resources you use, the military resource center, the Black resource center, the queer resource center, it all started with people doing sit-ins in the 60s. So whenever I hear anybody talking about, oh, this kind of stuff shouldn't be on campus, baby, a lot of the stuff that you utilized in the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, even thinking about Freaknik, right? Where, if you watch the Freaknik doc, Freaknik started as Black students saying we need to have our own space because these white students get an opportunity to have rock bands and people on campus. So we're going to do our own thing. So I just want to make sure that folks understand that before you critique the current, You got to understand the history.
Without
That's all I wanted
protest,
to
we
say.
would not even be on campus. Our black asses
Hello?
would not be on campus, period. Our queer asses would not be on campus, period. Like,
Hello?
without these things, we wouldn't even be getting to get education at all. So, like, what do you mean it's not meant to be on campus?
Like,
Bitch, if not there, then
what do
where?
you mean? Right. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? That's all I ever
What do
see
you
is that
mean? What do you
Jennifer
mean?
Lawrence meme in my head
What do you
whenever
mean?
somebody,
What do you
what do you
mean?
mean? What do you mean? Like, I see that. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into mine is a little bit narcissistic this week, because it is about me. But I wanted to take a negative and turn it into a positive. So my yes ma'am is the troll who sat down and made 5 different emails to send me a whole bunch of hatred. Baby, bravo to you. Bravo. Like, I just want to say on the podcast that you critiqued in message, I think it was
I
like
hope they
message
hear
number 4
this.
that you
I
sent
hope
me.
they hear
You
this
critiqued
because
the podcast. So that tells me that you listen. So I appreciate the download. I appreciate I appreciate
period.
all of the time and effort that you put into your last message about looking at my partner and critiquing our vote. So that means you go on my Instagram, which also means that you view. So, baby, that means that you've been keeping up. And I appreciate you. I appreciate the
Keeping
fact
up.
that you ain't got nothing better else to do in your world. Like basically, like TJ said at the beginning of the show, right? Android users are not thinking about iOS users. I feel the same way about you, baby. I ain't thinking about you. I honestly don't have the time. I have what almost 40,000 words that I need to try to get into this document before October. I'm not worried about you, baby. I got 2 presentations on Thursday I need to finish. I'm not thinking about you. I got staff I need to hire before next week because we're on a grant. I don't have time to be worried about what you think about me. So thank you for thinking about me more than I think about you. I just want to say that. Shout out to anybody who thinks about me more than I think about you. My no man Pam this week, I was going to talk about this whole idea. I saw someone's TikTok and it really spoke to me about this notion of, people not clapping for you and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like that is it's just so stupid when there's so many things that are happening. So my no man Pam this week, I'm going to also just, again, Diddy, I want to speak about the whole Diddy thing real quick in my no man, because I also want to I want to share that for people that are still having this like, oh well, I don't know what to say and I don't know how to reckon with this. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing Diddy do, and this is not alleged because he's putting it out, is very in line with sociopath behavior. And what I mean by that is, and this is again, I did my Googles and I looked it up before I said it, but what we see a lot in abuse is someone apologizing and saying, "Oh, I wasn't in a good place and I was going through this." And what it is they're trying to absolve the reason why they acted in the manner that they did rather than take accountability. And so I think for me, what I really wanted to say in my no ma'am is really about this notion of accountability. It's this idea that yes, we all are human. We all have things that we're dealing with, mental health, all of these things, right? But there's still something in me that says, even for this human, in looking at Diddy, and again, I try not to put so much heat behind black men or black people in general on the show, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
something to be said to me about this idea of, instead of Diddy just saying, "Yeah, I fucked up, I did it," and I have to, I'm doing what I need to do to become a better person. Cassie, I know you'll probably never forgive me. I'm really sorry. And, and every woman out there, you have every reason to be pissed off at me. It was a whole bunch of excuses. And it's the same thing. I think what really got to me in hearing that is, it's the same shit my stepfather said to my mom after he abused her. It's the same shit that my dad said to me when I asked him, "Why did you run out on my family?" Right?
Yeah.
There was never, it's never no responsibility. So I just want to say this to anyone who might be listening, who has dealt with abuse or who is dealing with abuse or is thinking about whatever is happening in the media and it feels heavy. Make sure that you take care of yourself, but also at the same time, you do not have to accept an apology from somebody who has harmed you. So that's all I got to say. TJ, what are your yes ma'ams and your no ma'ams for this?
Sure. First off, y'all made me feel real good, so thank you. That was beautiful. And also, this is great. I will just say, to keep the theme going for the yes ma'ams, what I've been talking about is, I want to just shout out some Black professors that made me feel like I could
Yes,
do this,
yes.
right? So in undergrad, right? So Danny Widener, Shalonda Dexter, and Stephanie Smallwood were the first 3 Black people I saw being professors, and I was like, oh, I could. Huh. And so I think that, and then I think just in my current job, I just want to shout out some Black professors that are doing it right now. So Corey Gooding, Angela Nurse, and Tony Bell, Carlton Floyd, Jesse Mills, like you are all making it happen. I see you, and you make my job possible because I see
love
you.
it.
So they are out here living, being Black, and taking up space, and it makes my job so much better. So, oh, and I guess the only other thing is I have to say on a really flip level, my other yes ma'am has to be, as you've already mentioned, Sabrina Carpenter has made this last month possible for me. I am working late because I'm a singer. I can't relate to desperation, and it is that me, espresso. I make a little mocha pot every morning, and I like fill it, and I pack it with like some little spice. So today was cardamom with espresso on top of in the little mocha pot, and I'm always like, I always talk to the Amazon Echo, and I'm like, espresso by Sabrina Carpenter as it's percolating, and I'm just like it's a dance break. I get a whole dance. So she's given it, and I'm grateful. But no, my Pam, I want to just, I mean, Diddy can get right fucked. Like, but I think also one of the things that has to happen is my No Man Pam is there's just casual misogynoir, right? The sense that Black women are always not to be taken seriously, and they must always be considered after our men. And sometimes people want to extend that to us when we look enough dude shaped, and then they immediately want to take it away from us when we are either too femme or too he they or too they for them. And that all comes back down to misogynoir for us in our bodies. So fuck that forever. And then my other No Man Pam, just really briefly, is there are many reasons why the Drake Kendrick feud was exhausting. We all knew that Drake ain't shit, and we know that Kendrick beat a dead horse. We also know that Kendrick is also a little bit not shit in terms of the way that he engaged in a healthy amount of misogynoir in his own self. But what I also I have said this more than once to my student, and trans misogyny. I just want to also say, like, yeah, because he was absolutely transphobic in this. I want to say one of the things that annoyed me most about this diss battle is that then they did it in public, so now white people feel entitled to have opinions about all of this, and it is exhausting. I am uninterested in almost every white person's opinion about this, but because it is all out in the music and they already feel entitled to everything we produce, they also feel entitled to entering into any conversation with me about conversations about Blackness that they are actually not equipped for. Half of those conversations that even Drake is having there are advanced level in a Blackness, and Drake is superficial in lots of ways, but you are not ready, and you are playing with things you don't know about.
And please don't ask us because we're Black either. Don't be like, do you have thoughts on the Kendrick and Drake battle? Bitch, I listened to
I've had that happen already.
Bitch,
I've had it happen.
to Kehlani and Too Short. I'm listening to Lady Gaga. Like, I'm not. Have I heard them? Yes. Well, I listen to them, sure, but like they are not my forever girls. Don't ask me about them. I have thoughts that I will tell the Black people. Not you, hoes. Calm down.
Yeah, they're not. This is not a conversation for you, Chad. And while you're lovely, Chad, I'll need to talk about it with you, Chad.
It always reminds me. I think I shared this one time on the mic. I remember one time I was in Vegas and I was getting on an elevator, and there was a whole bunch of white women on the elevator, and I think I had on a Beyonce shirt, and I think that like that's how it came up. But I remember them just like starting to sing lyrics to like Beyonce's song, and I think that like in my mind, like I was like, I kind of gave them that look of like, no, we're not doing that. But it was kind of like in my mind, it's like you don't have to try to connect with me through like Black culture, sis. Like, yes, Renaissance is a great album, but bitch, it's not for you. Like that literally is, it's just not like it's not your thing. And so like thank you for saying that.
What song did they sing? I'm so curious because I'm curious of like what did they pull from the repertoire? Were they like
it was really early in the morning and you could tell that they were over the night. You know in Vegas like, you can always tell when the girls have had a long night and that they are like drunk still. But it's like, bitch, it's 8:30 in the morning. You should have been asleep long time ago. And so I don't even remember what song it was, but I do remember that moment happening in an elevator where the girls was just like, woo, like they were trying to connect with me on that level. And I'm looking at them like, you look foolish. Like it, that's not like, I don't even do that with other Black people. Like I don't walk up to other
in the
black
morning.
people and be like, "Ooh, girl, like look, like we don't do that." It's so stupid. It's just it's so yes. So I really truly appreciate you saying that. And in reality, at the end of the day, like that whole entire battle is just tired, and I'm just so over it because I'm like, neither one of them is taking up any energy in my psyche and my chi. Like I don't really care about either one of them. So it is what it is. But anyway, with all that being said, this has been an absolutely fucking fantastic episode. Please send us your thoughts because I know y'all are gonna have them, and if you don't, you literally are just you're wasting your time. There's so much information in this episode. I'm so grateful, Dr. Tallie, that you came with us. But please send us your feedback to blackfatfempod@gmail.com. You can also send us your thoughts via social medias by interacting with our post on Instagram and Twitter by using the handle at blackfatfempod. What I was gonna say before I went into this. I was gonna say shout out to XD because XD said something similar to this on their episode. They said that they wished that when black people feuded, especially like in music, that it was only at a frequency that we could hear and nobody else could hear. That was the most awesome thing that I heard someone say. So I just wanted to shout out XD for saying that. But anyway, all that to be said, we got to wrap up. TJ, where can the dolls find you?
Sure. So I'm on a lot of socials. They're private because I'm a professor, but you just message me and we'll fix this, right? So I'm still on X Twitter. It's Hafrican, HALFRICAN _ONE, Hafrican1.
Genius.
It was a while ago. You can find me on Instagram.
So genius.
I know, right? You can find me on Instagram at Teejasaurus on Instagram, TEEJASAURUS. And then I do have a fashion blog about and what it's like moving through the world in my body, and that's called clockworkblackblog.wordpress.com. So Clockwork Black Blog. But yeah, you can find me on those. I am frequently on the internet.
And I was gonna say, so we're gonna this is not a period. This is definitely a comma. We were gonna get into some of the fashion and we ran over on time, but do know, listeners, that if the styling and the questions and stuff, if you have any questions that you want to ask TJ or if you want to talk more with them, please send us that in the email too. We are definitely going to be having them back on the episode in the next couple of weeks. But all that to be said, this, like I said, this is not a period. This is definitely a comma. Queen Joho, where can the dolls find you?
As usual, my sweet loves, you can find me at Joho Daniels across all socials, my website, jorandaniels.com. And if not there, you can see me acting up and acting churlish. Acting churlish to the white folks who want to connect with me over black shit. It's just not for me. So just catch me, catch me giving them these hands. That's all I got to say. And I just real quickly give a shout out to just what about fashion. Y'all need if y'all get the chance to follow TJ, if TJ gives you the chance to let you in to see the world, just know this bitch right here, down, just down. Like the fits are always fitting. The tin tops are rotation. Like y'all really don't understand like the fashion that TJ be doing. So y'all, if y'all get the privilege, you really will be gagged by it.
Yes.
And by some other things as well, because TJ a little spicy on their social medias as well too. So
You're not wrong.
I live for it. I will say this, and I hope you take this as a beautiful nugget of joy. I love professors, black academics, queer educators who are disrupting what the standard is in education. And so I love that you show up the way that you do, because you are like, you literally are giving other queer, black, other individuals on campus the authority to be who they are. So I'm so grateful and so thankful that you exist in this world. As for me, you can visit my website and leave more hate notes at www.drjohnpaul.com. Or you can add me on social by using at drjohnpaul.com. Otherwise, you can catch me and my sugars being super high because next week my black ass is going to Pennsylvania and I'm about to eat all the Amish donuts. Sugar diabetes be damned. I plan to eat all the donuts because it is what I have deserved, honey. Okay. With that being said, we want to thank our producer, Bay Wang, for handling all the logistics and everyone over at iHeartMedia for keeping the show up and running. We would also like to shout out our wonderful editor, Chris Rogers, because without him, we would have no visuals or no show. Beyonce, Giselle, Nose Carter, I'm still on your neck. I want them visuals, girl. I want Renaissance visuals, and I still want the video, the movie. Until I have both of those in my iTunes, I'm not, Giselle, I am not letting that up. You're not getting away from this. If somebody over at Parkwood listens to this show, can you just send it, please? Just send it to me. Just send it. It's that easy. Anyway, that has been another show. Stay black, fat, femme, and fabulous. And remember, cuss them out today so you can sleep better tonight.
Period.
I love us for real. Bye.
Bye.